Under the scorching sun of Mesopotamia, where the Fertile Crescent stretched between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, rose a civilization whose very name once inspired both awe and terror: Assyria. An empire of iron and fire, a kingdom of warriors, kings, and scribes, whose armies thundered across the ancient Near East, and whose memory remains carved in stone, even though their empire lies in ruins today. And as you join me on this journey, you will not only uncover how a modest city-state grew into a superpower, but also why their reign still teaches us about ambition, power, and collapse. For history is not only about what has been, but about what it means for us now. Imagine the city of Ashur, around 2500 BCE, a modest hub on the banks of the Tigris, its people trading tin, textiles, and grain, unaware that they were planting the seeds of an empire that would one day stretch from Egypt to Persia, from Anatolia to the Persian Gulf. In those early years, survival meant farming fertile plains, harnessing river waters, and invoking the blessings of their god, Ashur, a fierce deity whose spirit became the living symbol of the Assyrian state. And as generations passed, this devotion transformed into a belief that conquest itself was divine duty, that to expand was not ambition, but destiny. The Assyrians lived between powerful neighbors, the Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians, with their languages, cities, and gods. Yet unlike others, the Assyrians hardened in the crucible of constant threats, shaping a culture where war was not a burden, but a way of life. And as centuries passed, they created what many consider the world's first true professional army, an institution built not on part-time militias or peasant levies, but on trained, disciplined, salaried soldiers, whose sole task was to fight and win. They forged iron weapons sharper and stronger than the bronze blades of their enemies, built fearsome chariots that rolled across battlefields like thunder, trained archers whose volleys darkened skies, and cavalry whose speed broke enemy lines. Yet their most terrifying innovations lay in siegecraft. For while most ancient cities relied on walls for safety, the Assyrians built battering rams, movable towers, and tunnels to undermine defenses, ensuring no fortress could long resist them. But their true genius was psychological. They used terror as a weapon, boasting of impalements, flayings, and mass deportations not in secret, but in inscriptions carved proudly on palace walls, so that any who entered new rebellion meant annihilation. And in doing so, they created not just an army of iron, but an empire of fear. Their kings became legends of power. Ashurnasirpal II in the 9th century BCE expanded Assyria's borders and transformed Nimrod into a glittering capital filled with colossal winged bulls and walls carved, with war and lion hunt scenes that glorified kingly might, and he invited thousands to a 10-day banquet to showcase Assyria's wealth and dominance. Tiglath-Pileser III in the 8th century BCE reformed the empire, turning conquered lands into provinces governed directly by Assyrian officials, establishing a bureaucracy that collected tribute and taxes efficiently, and building roads for armies and messages to move with unheard-of speed. Sargon II conquered lands stretching across the Levant, founded the city of Ashurnasirpal with palaces adorned by detailed reliefs, and cemented Assyria's status as unrivaled superpower. Sennacherib, his son, moved the capital to Nineveh, adorning it with massive walls, aqueducts, and possibly the legendary Hanging Gardens, while also unleashing fury on Babylon, destroying it to ash when it rebelled, leaving inscriptions declaring he had made it a wasteland for fish and birds. And then came Ashurbanipal, the scholar king, who was not only a conqueror, but a collector of knowledge, amassing the famed Library of Nineveh, tens of thousands of clay tablets preserving myths like the Epic of Gilgamesh, medical texts, astronomy, law codes, and prayers, a treasure trove that centuries later would allow us to rediscover the voices of Mesopotamia. Yet the glory of Assyria was not only measured in wars and kings, for their cities were marvels of organization and splendor. Nineveh's walls stretched nearly 8 miles, studded with gates guarded by colossal Amasu, statues, human-headed winged bulls symbolizing divine protection, its streets lined with palaces whose rooms depicted carved scenes of conquest, hunts, rituals, and processions, its gardens irrigated by canals that carried water for miles away, and its people artisans, scribes, soldiers, farmers, and merchants living under the shadow of both prosperity and fear. Daily life was a blend of magnificence and severity. Scribes recorded taxes and oaths in cuneiform. Soldiers trained relentlessly. Priests conducted sacrifices to Ashur and Ishtar. Women wove textiles, merchants traded grain, tin, and lapis lazuli, and commoners' new loyalty brought stability. But disobedience brought deportation. For Assyrian kings moved entire populations from one corner of the empire to another, breaking resistance while spreading cultures, creating a forced mosaic of peoples under their banner. The Assyrian Empire at its height stretched across the known world of the time, from Egypt, where pharaohs paid tribute, to Anatolia, where Hittite remnants bent to Assyrian will, to Babylon, which alternated between rebellion and subjugation, to Judah, where biblical accounts tell of King Hezekiah shutting himself like a bird in a cage before the armies of Sennacherib. Their campaigns were brutal, yet their administration was efficient, their art monumental, and their influence far-reaching, shaping political and military models for centuries. And yet, as with all empires, the seeds of destruction lay within. The vast empire became too large to govern effectively. Constant wars drained resources. The cruelty that maintained fear also bred hatred, and when new powers rose, the Medes from the Iranian plateau and the Babylonians reborn in the south, alliances formed against the Empire of Iron. In 612 BCE, the coalition stormed Nineveh, and after months of siege fire consumed the once glorious city. Its palaces crumbled, its treasures looted, its statues toppled. Assyria, the terror of nations, was erased almost overnight, and its survivors scattered its name, fading into memory, until excavations in the 19th century unearthed its cities once again. But though Assyria fell, its legacy endured. Its methods of governance inspired later empires, its art revealed unmatched skill in storytelling through stone. Its military strategies became templates for centuries, and its Library of Nineveh preserved knowledge that would otherwise have been lost forever. So when we remember Assyria, we do not only recall its brutality, but also its brilliance. Not only its cruelty, but its creativity, for it was both conqueror and preserver, builder and destroyer, a civilization that reminds us how power can create wonders, but also how arrogance and fear can bring ruin. And as UVA traveled with me from the dusty markets of Ashur to the burning walls of Nineveh, through the triumphs of kings and the sufferings of conquered peoples, through the grandeur of palaces and the shadows of terror, let this story be more than history. Let it be a mirror showing how ambition, unchecked, can both lift and destroy. How knowledge, preserved, can outlast empires, and how every civilization, no matter how mighty, is vulnerable to the tides of time. If this story of Assyria, the empire of iron and fire, of kings and conquests, of knowledge and downfall, fascinated you, then I invite you to keep history alive with me. Like this video if you found it engaging, subscribe to the channel for more deep journeys into lost civilizations, and share your thoughts in the comments below about which empire, culture, or mystery you'd like us to explore next. Because together, we can ensure that the echoes of the ancient world continue to speak in our time.